Hi! In this video, we're going to make a game about one of life's greatest challenges, keeping your phone from falling into the toilet. Ah! In this game, an iPhone is about to fall into a toilet. Ah! Your job is to keep it up and dry above the toilets. I'm going to explain each step to make this game, and you can follow along with me. If you're watching this video in the Hopscotch app, you're in a working project with a video player overlaid on top, so you can make this project along with me at the same time that you're watching the video. But sometimes you'll want to pause the video to check your work, so we're going to practice pausing the video together now. When I say freeze, I want you to make 2 taps. First, tap on the video screen to display the controls, and then tap again on the pause button in the middle of the screen. Okay, ready? Now freeze. Nice. Did you get it to pause? Great. And if you didn't, please take the time right this moment to figure it out, because pausing the video will be important to help you code the game correctly. And now let's practice rewinding the video using the little black arrow at the bottom left. Go ahead and try it now. Tap on the video player to pull up the controls and press rewind. Did you get it to rewind? Great. Now you know how to use the video player. You can also drag it around and resize it, but make sure you still have room to write your code. Okay, let's get started. First, I'm going to tap on this gray plus button on the bottom of my screen to add the first object. Remember now, you're in a working project here too, so you can code along with me. Look down towards the bottom of your screen in the middle there and tap on your plus button. You can scroll over to check out all the objects. I'm going to pick one here just to show you how it works. I'll choose this squiggle here. See how it jumped up to the stage? I can move it around to place it anywhere. But since this squiggle object isn't really a part of my Don't Drop the Phone game, I want to delete it, so I'll drag it down to where this trash can appears at the bottom and drop it in. I'll say yes, delete to this pop-up, and poof, gone. Okay, so since I'm trying to make the Don't Drop the Phone game, what I really need is a phone object. So for that, I'm going to use a phone emoji. I'll go back to this plus button to get a new object, and for emojis, I'll tap text, which is this first blue square. This lets me use text or emojis as objects. Now I'll tap down here to open the emoji keyboard and get the iPhone emoji, which is way over to the right. You can scroll over or just get there by tapping on the little gray light bulb at the bottom, which will jump you over to the right place. And here's the iPhone on the left. And then I'll tap check, and see? This emoji becomes an object on the stage that I can program. Great. Now let me move the phone emoji to the top of the screen. Okay, and if you need to, pause the video here to make sure you're caught up. Okay, so now that I have an iPhone emoji added to the stage, I'm going to program it. I want it to be falling down, so let's program that now. I'll tap Add Code, and that will open up the iPhone emojis editor. So this is the editor, and this is how you program all of your objects. Every object in Hopscotch is programmed with rules. For any object to do something, it has to have a rule, and to make a rule, you need at least one of these magenta when blocks that you see here when you scroll over. And you can't make a rule without these. All of these magenta blocks tell the object when it's supposed to do something. So we need to pick out the right when to trigger our action. And by the way, don't worry if your when's menu here doesn't have these white blocks. You just might be on an older version of Hopscotch. So for this game, I want to make sure my phone starts falling as soon as the game starts. So I'll pick this first magenta block when game starts. Great. It jumps up, and then you can see the menu at the bottom switches from the magenta when blocks to a different menu of blocks. We call these method blocks. All of these method blocks tell our little iPhone emoji what to do when the game starts. So all of the when blocks from the menu before in magenta have a container shape like this. and the other colored method blocks go inside of them in the order you want the methods to happen. You can tell which menu you're in because the when blocks are only magenta and the method blocks are different colors, and they have rainbow blocks here at the beginning. So back to programming our game. Since I want the phone to fall when the game starts, I'm going to program that. I'll scroll over to these red movement blocks and pick Change Y By. Change Y moves an object on the vertical Y-axis or up and down on the screen. First, I'm going to try a big negative number to make it move down, like -200. Okay, and I'll press the check button. Okay, I just wrote my first rule. See? When the game starts, change Y by -200. If you notice this little white arrow up next to the word when, you can tap it to collapse the whole rule, and it just sort of snaps shut, but my red code block is still inside. See, you can open it again. Here it is. Okay, so now the moment of truth. I'm going to check to make sure it works. I'll tap this triangle play button in the top right corner, and there we go, falling phone. Awesome. So what I really want is for it to fall all the way to the bottom of my screen. So I'm going to tap this little pencil in the upper right-hand corner to get back into my code editor again. By the way, if you're coding along and yours doesn't look like mine, pause the video here to make sure you get it right. Okay, so I want the phone to keep falling rather than just going part way. So I'm going to delete this block by dragging it by these 3 little grippy lines on the right side here and drag it down to the bottom to throw it into the trash. If you're following along and having difficulty dragging the block, make sure you are grabbing it on the very edge here with these lines. And now I'll tap back inside my magenta when game starts container block to pull up the methods menu again. Make sure you tap inside the container and you have your rainbow methods menu. If you have your magenta when's menu, you tapped outside of the container. So I want to build a better version of the falling iPhone emoji rule. I'll scroll all the way over to the blue control section of the method blocks, and I'll pick repeat forever. You see, it's also a container block, just like the magenta when. We have to put something inside this container. I'm going to scroll back to the red change Y by block, pick that, and add -10, and press check. Okay, so let's take a look at the new rule we just wrote. When the game starts, repeat forever, change Y by -10. Make sure your rule looks like mine and pause to fix it if it doesn't. Okay, now let's try it out. I'll press play. Nice! To restart, I can just press this little arrow loop in the upper right. Great! I coded the first part of the game. Now let's go back to the editor and build the next thing. Okay, I've got the falling phone. Now what I need are some toilets. I'm going to tap the X in the top left corner of the editor to close out of the iPhone emojis code. Now I'm back at the stage. I'm going to add another object, some toilet emojis. So I'll tap the gray plus button down here, tap text, go to my emoji keyboard again, and find the toilet emoji. You can jump to it again by tapping the little light bulb in the menu at the bottom and scrolling over. Here it is, right near the bathtubs. This time I'm going to put 3 toilets together in a row to make an object and press check to see it on the stage. Okay, now I'm going to pull this toilets object to the bottom of the screen so the iPhone can fall down into them. I'll press play to check if it works. Yep, nice. Now, if you need to pause to make sure yours is working like this too, go ahead and I'll wait. Okay, so let's look at this again. You see how the iPhone keeps falling past the toilets? I don't want that. I want it to disappear when it hits the toilet, so it looks like it's falling in. This is kind of like game over. So I'm going to tap the pencil to add some more code. Since I want the phone to disappear when it hits the toilet, I'm going to add a new rule to it that says, when I hit the toilet, disappear. So I'll tap over here to get to the phone's code. Okay, we're back in the editor. This blinking turquoise box at the top shows where the new code will go. I don't want to get confused by the when the game starts rule that I've already written in here, so I'm just going to tap on this arrow to close it up so I don't accidentally put something in that container. Okay, so new rule. Remember, every rule has to have at least one magenta when block. So I'll tap in the white space below here to pull up the when blocks menu. I'm going to scroll over to collisions and pick bumps. So now it says when anything bumps anything, but I really want it to say when the phone bumps the toilet. So I'll tap on the first white anything bubble and I can change it from anything to self, and tap on the second bubble to change to these toilets that say text 2. Okay, so now our magenta when container should read, when self bumps the toilet emojis text 2. And self just means this iPhone emoji is talking about itself. So what should happen when the self bumps the toilets? Self should disappear. So I'll scroll over in our methods menu here to find a green block called set invisibility and pop that in. And I want the iPhone to turn 100% invisible so it looks like it disappears. So I'll type in 100 and check. Okay, let's take a look at the rule I just wrote. When self bumps the toilets, set invisibility percent to 100. Pause here if you need to make sure your code looks like mine, and then we can try it out together. Okay, ready to try it out? Let's hit play and boom, phone hits the toilet and game over. Okay, now there's just one little problem. This isn't a very fun game. It's really just an animation. There's nothing that a game player can do to interact with the falling phone. What I want to do is code it so that every time someone taps the screen, the phone bounces up again. So how can I code that? Do you know? Think for a second about how I would do it. I'll need to add a new rule. The new rule will say when the phone is tapped, bounce up. Simple. So let's do it. I'm going to tap the pencil to get back. I'll close up the when self bumps text 2 rule so I don't get confused by it. And then I'll start a new rule. I'll tap in the white space at the bottom here to pull up the magenta when blocks menu. I'll find the magenta is tapped block and pick it to start a new rule. By the way, it's a little confusing for this particular game because I happen to be coding a rule for my little iPhone emoji object in my game, but that's not what this little white bubble at the top is referring to. So I'm going to tap on the little white bubble here to change it to self again. So it should read when self is tapped. Pause here to make sure your code looks like mine. Okay, so now I started a rule when self is tapped. So what should go inside this when container to finish the rule? I want the iPhone emoji to bounce up. So I have my rainbow methods menu here, and I'm going to scroll over and get a red change Y by block again. And this time, instead of falling down, I want it to go up. I'll tap 200, check, and then let's read the finished rule. When self is tapped, change Y by 200. Great. Pause here if you need to, and if not, let's check it out. Okay, I'm going to tap the play button. Nice! I can tap on the phone and it bounces up again. I have a working game. Don't let the phone fall into the toilet. Great. If you followed along, you also have a working game. Great job! You can stop here if you want to just play with it and publish this game and show it to your friends, or if you want to try coding something else. You can also look in the community to play games that other hopscotchers have made. Or if you want to add more to this game, like sound effects or multiple falling phones that appear randomly, just keep listening along for some bonus coding. Okay, so you decided to add some more to this game. Great! Coders are always working on polishing their products. So I was thinking it might be fun to add a sound effect to my game when the phone hits the toilets. I'm going to go back to my code to add in a sound. I want the sound to happen when the phone itself bumps the toilets, which we already have a when for. So I'm just going to put in an additional method into this rule. I'll close up this other rule and drag the rule I want to work on to the bottom. Then I'll tap on this arrow to the left to open it up. It already says when self bumps text2, set invisibility percent to 100. But I want to add in an additional method inside this container. So I'm going to tap on the white space to the side here to get the blinking turquoise cursor below this green block, but inside the container. And here we have the rainbow methods menu again. Let me scroll over to find a sound effect method. By the way, if you ever want to know what each of these blocks do, just long press them for some help text. Sorry. So I'm going to tap on the green Start Sound block to add it in. And in this first bubble, I can pick the sound. See what happens when I add the bell sound? If you want to change the sound, just tap the first bubble of the Start Sound block, mine has a bell in it, to choose something else. When you're trying this, if you don't hear any sounds, make sure your volume is turned up and your ringer is on. Anyway, I want mine to make a kind of a water sound, so I'm going to tap this first bubble again and scroll over under the nature menu here and pick these bubbles to be my sound effect. Okay, cool. I'll try it out. All right, it works. Nice. You can pause here if you want to try different sound effects for your game, or you can keep going for some even more advanced coding. Okay, so you want to level up on this game? Let's do it. What I want to do is make this game more interesting by having multiple falling phones, like this. So to do that, I'm going to make some clones of my phone and program them the same way I did the original phone. I'll go into the phone's code editor here. Okay, I want the phone to be cloned at the very beginning of the game. So I'm going to add to my when game starts rule. I'll first drag the magenta block to the bottom to make it easy to code, and then I will pop it open by tapping the arrow. Okay, it has the blue repeat forever container open, and I'm going to close that to keep from getting confused. Now, because I need to add a new method block inside this when container, I'm going to tap right here in the white space above the blue block to pull up my methods menu. And you see the blinking turquoise cursor made space inside the container for the new block, and my rainbow methods menu just opened up. Make sure your screen matches mine exactly. If you see the magenta whens menu and not the rainbow menu, that means that you tapped outside the container, so pause and fix it. Okay, I want to make multiple phones, so I'm going to scroll over to the blue control blocks and get create a clone. A clone is a copy, so this will make a copy of the iPhone. Since I want multiple copies, I'll get the blue repeat block and type 6 into the little bubble. Then I'll grab the create clone block and drag it inside the repeat container. This means the game will clone the iPhone 6 times. So look at your screen and make sure it matches mine exactly. Inside the magenta when game starts container should have an open repeat times 6 container block that has a blue create a clone block inside of it, and then a closed repeat forever container block. Pause here to check your work. Okay, cool. We want to have the original iPhone create 6 clones and then disappear so it's out of the way and we can focus on the clones. So let me close up the blue repeat times 6 container block. And then I'll tap in here between the two blue blocks to pull up the methods menu again and go get a green set invisibility block. I'll type 100 in the bubble, check, and this will make the original phone disappear after it creates the clones. Pause here and make sure your code matches mine exactly. When game starts, repeat times 6, set invisibility percent 100, repeat forever. Okay, now I want to program the clones. So I need to make a new rule. I'm going to close this magenta when game starts container. Now I'll tap in the space below to get a new when container block. Because I added a create clone block earlier, I now have a when object is cloned container block. So I'll choose that. Okay, now all the method blocks I put in here will tell the iPhone's clones what to do when they're generated. I want each of the clones to go to a random place at the top of the screen and then start falling. I also want to make them a bit bigger so they're easier to tap. So I'll get a green set size block and type 200, check, which will make them 200% or twice as big. Then I'll get a red set position block in the movement menu. This block is code that will move an object to a specific point or X and Y location on the screen. I want them to go to a random spot that the computer picks, so I'll set these two numbers to random by scrolling to the number pad to the right and finding the purple random block. Now random has two bubbles for you to choose the smallest and biggest possible numbers it can be. In this first bubble of random, for the smallest number, I'll type 1. And in the second bubble, the biggest number, I'll scroll right until I find the yellow width block and add it. This means that each phone clone will show up in some random spot between 1 and however wide the screen is. I'll then tap the next bubble after Y and add the yellow height block. This means that the phone clones will go to whatever the height of my screen is, so they'll show up at the top. Okay. Pause here and make sure your code matches mine. You should have a magenta when object is cloned container, and inside it should be a green set size %200 block and a red set position to X random 1 to screen width, Y screen height. Okay, so let me try this out. Okay, looks like it's working. The iPhone emoji made 6 clones and then disappeared so fast you barely even saw it. And then all the clones went into random places. Okay, so now I need to code them to fall down, which I do the same way as I did with my single iPhone earlier. I'll go back into my editor. I'll tap inside at the bottom of my when object is cloned container, which will pull up the rainbow methods menu. I'll scroll over and get a blue repeat forever block, and then inside that, I'll put a red change Y by block and have it go -5, check. Okay, pause here to make sure your code matches mine. Remember, if you pulled up the magenta when blocks instead of the rainbow blocks, it means you did not tap inside the container. Get the blinking turquoise cursor inside the when object is cloned container and make sure your code matches mine exactly. It should say when object is cloned, set size %200, set position, then repeat forever, change Y by -5. Pause here to make sure your code looks like mine. Okay, now I'm going to try this out. I'll press play and hooray! All the clones are falling from random places. What's even better, when I tap them, they all bounce up because they are clones of that original one and they all still remember that code from it. Okay, now we need to add more toilets to catch all the phones. I want the toilets to go all across the bottom of the screen. Since toilets are a different object, we'll have to go back and modify them. I'm going to get out of the player here and then X out of the code editor for the phone clones. Okay, I'm back on the stage now. I'm going to double tap to get into the code editor for my toilets. And then up here at the top, I'm going to tap in this white bubble that has the toilet emojis, which will let me edit them. The regular keyboard came up because this is a text object. So I'll pull up the emoji keyboard and add a bunch more toilets. Since I'm on an iPhone 7, 11 toilets are going to cover the bottom of my screen. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and I'll add in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 toilets. You might need to adjust this depending on what size device you're on. When you close out of the code editor, check to make sure your toilets are all in one line. If you're on an iPad and you're making this game in landscape mode, to make sure your toilets cover the bottom of the screen, you'll need to add 15 toilets and then add some code to them that says, when game starts, grow by 100%. The grow by block is green. Okay, pause the video here and check to make sure your toilets cover the bottom of the screen. Okay, and now the moment of truth. I'm going to try it out. I'll press play up here, and yes, it's working. The whole game works. Hope it is working for you too. We've come to the end of our tutorial. Hope you had a fun time making this game. You can make the game easier or harder by adjusting how fast the objects go, how big they are, or you can search in the community for projects that show you how to make timers or keep score. If you want, after the end of this video, you can make a duplicate copy of your game by pressing the home button in the top left and then long pressing the draft, which will give you an option to duplicate it. Play around with it and have fun. Happy coding, and remember not to bring your phone into the bathroom.